Hi, everybody. This is Michael Port, and we are doing an interview today with Tim Ferriss. I'm really excited about it. Say hi, Tim.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me, Michael.
Yeah, of course. So I'm going to read a quick bio for those of you who have not been initiated into the Tim Ferriss world. I imagine most of you have, so I'm going to go quickly. Tim, well, he was nominated as one of Fast Company's most innovative business people of 2007. He's the author of the #1 New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Business Week bestseller, The 4-Hour Workweek, which has actually been published in 35 languages, and I think you can speak almost all of those languages, yes?
Working on it.
Yeah.
Working on it.
So Wired Magazine has called Tim the Superman of Silicon Valley for his manipulation of the human body. He is a Tango world record holder, former national kickboxing champion, guest lecturer at Princeton University, and faculty member at Singularity University, based at the NASA Ames Research Center. Okay, so he is now come out with a book called The 4-Hour Body, which, and this is not my line, but it's his, is big enough to club a seal with. I mean, just to give you guys a little framework of how big this book is, this is the new edition, which comes out in the new year, of my first book, Book Yourself Solid. It's in now paperback. Look at it. And this is 90,000 words in paperback. Look at this. This is really kind of...
It's a big one. That's what you get when you work on something for 3 years.
All right, so let's start with an easy question, Tim. Why the 4-hour body?
Yeah, and I think that's an important question to start with, because for a lot of people, the 4-hour work week seems like a complete disconnect from the 4-hour body. So the 4-hour body, for me, is my true obsession. Most people associate me with time management, productivity, but I've actually been tracking myself and testing myself starting about a decade prior to the 4-hour work week. So that involves thousands of blood tests and also a high level of competition in athletics. So I was at a national level in collegiate wrestling, then national champion in kickboxing. And the reason that I wrote the book was really catalyzed by an interview with Clive Thompson of Wired. And this was one of my first major media interviews for the 4-hour work week. And we joked beforehand that the two fears of modern man could be boiled down to two things. And that was too much email and getting fat. And it's true. It's really true. And I bounced that off a number of people, and they all agreed. And I think that there are a few things lacking in most of the diet and fitness world. One is a very experimental, field-tested approach to gathering data. So I tracked hundreds of people. We tried every fad diet, every exercise regimen you can imagine. And secondly is really taking an approach that is possible to comply with. So you can take the most effective fat loss regimen in the world. Let's say it's something rather complicated like the cyclical ketogenic diet, where you have to match ketosis, which is like the Atkins diet, with glycogen depletion workouts. It works really well for fat loss, but 9 out of 10 people will quit it after 2 weeks. So finding the best blend of the most effective with the most easy to follow, I think was an important balance to strike. And the big question that led me to go to South Africa and experiment with stem cell growth factors and fly to China to talk to tea farmers and all this was, what are the smallest changes that produce the biggest results? And that ranged, as you know, because it's more of a choose your own adventure book. You're not intended to read it from A to Z, from fat loss to sex to sleep to ultra endurance to anything you can imagine. And I think that this is the most important work I've written because, and I know we've spoken about this before, but the physical body is either your biggest performance enhancer or it's your biggest handicap. And unfortunately, for many people who kick ass in almost everything, the one place they accept mediocrity is with their physical body. And I don't think they have to.
So, I want to, the second thing I wanted to actually just discuss is appropriate for my audience. It's not going to be a typical question you'll get when you're on NBC. But there's from what I can tell, there's no back end to this book. Right. And I mentioned this right at the beginning of the interview because you did something in the book where you donate 10% of your royalties to charity, and all of the products that you reference you send through affiliate links that are also all dedicated to go to charity. Why do you do that? And is that correct that there's no back end to this?
So this is a very good question, and I think it's one that I've certainly thought about a lot, as you can expect. So there are two things. Excuse me. There's no back end at the moment in terms of coaching programs or anything like that. Not to say that that's a bad thing, but I recognized that I would be very heavily critiqued, and all of my data would be looked at very skeptically because I make some amazing claims. I mean, gained 34 pounds of muscle in 28 days like I did, which was supervised by a PhD, or any number of these. You learn to or train to run 50 miles in 12 weeks, even if you've never run more than 5 miles. And I didn't want people to say that my motivation was to sell product X or Y. So there are affiliate links in the book. Some of them do, let's say they go to Amazon. If it's not a supplement, in some cases, those are affiliate links for me. But if it goes to a supplement specifically, because that is where I will get the most criticism, especially because I used to own a sports nutrition company.
Well, that was going to be my question. Is that one of the reasons that you sold that company? Was it because you wanted to write this book?
It was to have a clean slate, absolutely. So one of the reasons I sold that company was that I wanted to be as bulletproof as possible. I didn't want people to say, he's just doing that because he has a profit motive. Yeah. So with all the supplements, like you said, the affiliate link actually sends whatever percentage it is, 5 to 10%, to Donors Choose, which does work with high-need public schools in the U.S. And there are a few reasons that I did that. Another is by virtue of the blog and everything else, I've realized that income is just a bartering tool in the sense that you trade income for an experience or possession. And when I've focused on establishing my credibility and the trust that my audience has in me, I can usually get those experiences or possessions, although it's usually experiences, just by asking my audience. And I can bypass that income altogether. So it's not to say that you should strive for that alone. It's not to say that you shouldn't have a coaching program or anything else like that. I'm considering it. If people ask for it, there's a good chance I'll do it. But my objective first and foremost was to make it really hard to criticize the content of the book and people will do it anyway, but I didn't want them to have a really clear angle of attack with profit motives. So that was my main reason.
Yeah. Well, because my girlfriend is very well known in the fitness industry. She does DVDs, and she's been in and produced a lot of the infomercials that you'll see, and she does a lot of dance, that kind of stuff. And immediately she said, "Oh my God, the infomercial, possibilities are endless here." You know,
it's true. And the thing is, I'm not against it, and I think that there's a good chance I'll do something later. But for the first few weeks, the first few months, when I'm really going to be tested. Because this hits it attacks a lot of myths. It doesn't attack people personally, but there's a lot of nonsense out there, and I've tested this stuff. I can say, the blood type diet, it's kind of nonsense, or the raw food diet, it's good in certain places, but you have to be careful about applying it to everything. Right. And people are going to get very upset. So I wanted to have the science to lean back on, as opposed to giving people a stick for beating me with, which would be, he's just doing it to make money at A, B, and C. Yeah, well, and I appreciate that, and I think that it allows for a real immediate connection with your audience. And my next question was actually about the controversial nature of the book. So I think it's controversial, A, because you do debunk a lot of conventional wisdom or pseudoscience, and B, many of your protocols are extreme. This is not, here's a balanced way of behaving in the world. And C, you are controversial. But interestingly enough, it's not, a lot of people are controversial because of the attitude that they bring to the conversations that they have, and you're not at all. But you take such a strong stand, which is one of the reasons that people find you very attractive. You take such a strong stand, and that's controversial. So, yes, you don't call anybody out specifically in the book, but there are a lot of people, especially in the fitness industry, who are going to take this very personally. Yeah, right. It's true. And
so this was my question was, in the, right now, just probably a few people have advanced copies, and I'm sure some of the media have advanced copies. have you gotten any feedback yet that so that in a way that you can tell what people are going to push back at you about?
Yeah, this is a good question. So I want to clarify one thing first, and it's you're absolutely right. There are some very extreme methods in the book. Doesn't mean they're necessarily dangerous, but they are extreme. And it's intended to offer a buffet of options for people from the most sort of benign and mild to the most extreme. And it was my obligation as the human guinea pig to test all of those things so that people don't have to do some of the crazier stuff, like the reversing injuries chapter that I did a lot. I reversed all my injuries in 6 months, almost all of them over 20 years of accumulation. And there were some pretty aggressive approaches that I took. The media, so this is just, I guess, a marketing lesson for the readers as well. I didn't feel the need to focus on mainstream media much for this book. I really feel like the tide has already shifted towards online and very specific domain experts such as yourself. I have done very few mainstream media interviews, and in fact, I only sent advanced copies to people I felt would have an open mind about these topics. And even if they had established positions, like I do, would be open to experimenting, considering the possibility that A, B, and C could be tested. And for that reason, I mean, some of the biggest, you would think I would send copies, I'm not going to name names, but some of the biggest fitness magazines, some of the biggest A, B, and C, the low-hanging fruit, I didn't send it to any of those people because I knew they would flip out.
Yeah.
I spoke to one gym chain, very well-known gym chain. I spoke to the CEO, and I wanted to do partnership and send people in to get body fat tested, and I wasn't going to make money from that. I just wanted to offer people an easy way to take that first step. And he said, well, you can send me the book, and I'll have my panel of experts evaluate it. And I was like,
yeah,
okay,
forget
it. That's not going to work. So I didn't send it. And this is this is a huge gym chain, and I said, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah. Well, I used to be in the fitness business on the business side of it, so I still know a lot of those people, and my girlfriend is, as I said, well connected in that world, and so I'm really excited to start to hear them calling me up and saying, so what's the deal? Do you know this guy? What's right? And I'll give you the feedback. But my personal feeling is that it is going to be the talk of that industry. It's going to absolutely be the buzz. I think people are going to be coming into all of their classes, all of their gyms, training sessions, saying, I'm doing the strength gaining approach that Tim recommends, or I'm doing the size, the body fat loss, etc. And I think they're all going to go out and read it. And first they may resist because there are some things that go against what they have been doing for some time. And then I think that they will come around. And I think it's going to be a big deal.
I hope so. Yeah. And I really want to start a movement with this book. And that is, I want to build an army of intelligent self-experimenters who don't feel like they are genetically fixed in every area of their physical self. Mm-hmm. And there is a right and a wrong way to do that. I think that what the book will do is provide for the people who are open-minded, or just the people who are profit-driven and hopefully ethical about it, it will provide a lot of very, very real financial opportunity for people in the fitness and diet industry if they want to take a page from the book, so to speak, and say, okay, this thing hopefully is going to reach millions of people. And some of the things that are very challenging to do in a mainstream fashion now, perhaps 12 months from now, will be very easy to do. Mm-hmm. And I think that'll be a good thing. So I'm hoping that will be the case, but I'll get attacked. And I can tell you right now who the most vocal will be because I already have seen it. And that is guys who either sort of average powerlifters or self-proclaimed bodybuilders. Not the top guys, but like the guys who are, they've been training for a few years, and they are the most vocal by far, and they're the most aggressive. Oh yeah, they're the most aggressive.
That's interesting because reading through it, considering this myself, my first assumption was that world of extreme individuals would be all over it immediately and so excited about it.
I think the guys who are up at the top, the ones who really, really know what they're doing, will at least be refreshed by my look at some very controversial topics, like talking about performance-enhancing drugs and where they have a place under medical supervision in some cases, things like that. I think they'll find that very refreshing. But the idea that I've gained 34 pounds of muscle in 28 days causes near apoplectic shock in many of those communities.
Right, sure.
And it's actually not that crazy. I mean, I could point to a number of different case studies that make that look pretty average. And I'm not saying that everyone can do that, but the idea that a hard gainer, if they do things right, can gain 10, 15 pounds of muscle in a month if they're, let's say, already way more than 130, that's not crazy at all. So we'll see how people respond. But I expect the meatheads, and they're smart meatheads. I mean, I think I'm kind of a meathead, but the vast majority of meatheads may rain down upon me. But I'm ready for that.
All right, well, let's go to more sort of general population issues.
Sure.
And I do, towards the end, I want to get back to your meatheadedness and also your geekiness. So we'll get back there a bit. But in the book, you cover a lot of topics. Obviously, 550 pages, and I've had it for a week, and I've read about 200 pages of the sections that I am choosing to study, which is what you recommended. And I've read these chapters again and again and again because it's a really I'm studying it. It's not a little story I'm reading and I get the story and I move on. So it has required some study for me. So you talk about rapid fat loss, rapid muscle gain, rapid strength gain, which includes injury proofing the body and becoming superhuman. You talk about rapid sense of total well-being, which includes improving sex, perfecting sleep, and reversing permanent injuries, and of course more. I think, however, most people, at least initially, are going to focus on losing weight.
Absolutely.
I think most books are written about that. It's the biggest issue that most people have. So I think, certainly many people will be, I think a lot of people will be attracted to the 15-minute female orgasm guaranteed section, but they're going to look at weight loss. And it's not just a weight loss book, but I think the conversation is often going to focus on weight loss. So is that what you expect?
That is what I expect. Yeah. And if you'd like, I could give people in a nutshell a few of the things I'd recommend. Because I think that the principles that you learn in any one of these topics, because you'll recall that in the beginning of the book, the first 50 pages or so focus on failure-proofing your behavior. So that whichever protocol you choose, you actually stick with it for not just 2 weeks, but for whatever period of time you need to follow it. And the focus is on small changes and simple rules. Simple works. If you try to adopt 2-3 behaviors at the same time, it really just does not work. One of the guys I interviewed was BJ Fogg, who's the head of the Persuasion Laboratory at Stanford University, and really wanted to focus on how do we allow the highest percentage of people to actually succeed with these changes. And with fat loss, so my dad was about 250 at 5'6", and proceeded to lose 90 pounds of fat and gain between 20 and 30 pounds of muscle. He's 65. And the way he did that was really simple. He followed what I call the slow-carb diet, and I'll give everybody the rules really, really quickly. I mean, the fine-tuning is where the magic really happens, but the basic rules are don't eat anything white, so that means no grains, no bread, etc. That's for 6 days a week, and this is very critical. Number 2 is don't drink your calories, so you're just going to be drinking whether it's unsweetened iced tea or green tea, water, etc. You can have a little bit of wine. I like my wine, so 1 to 2 glasses a night of red is fine. Number 3 is you're going to find your default meals. Okay, so you're going to find a handful of meals and repeat those meals. Now, for dinner, you can have more flexibility, but if you ask people, what did you have for breakfast this last week, they'll have the same 2 or 3 meals, maximum, that they rotate. So it's just finding the right default meals. And minimizing fruit is a controversial one, but minimizing fruit from all of the tests that I've done, especially if you look at evolutionarily speaking, if you're from an ethnic background that puts you in Russia in the 1700s.
That would be me. You see
fruit
the hair on the arms?
Yeah, not too much. Yeah, exactly. Not too much fruit in the summer in Russia. So you certainly.
Well, as you say, no Florida oranges.
Right. No Florida oranges in Belarus in 1700s. Right. So you can certainly stick to once a week. And the last rule is you take 1 day off a week and you overfeed, you binge, and you have fun. You do whatever you want. And not only does this improve thyroid output, Not only does it improve your hormonal profile, but psychologically, it allows you to tell yourself, I'm not giving up these following 10 things that I love. I'm only giving them up for 6 days. And so 58% of the people that I tracked said, this is the first time I've ever been able to follow a diet. So keeping it simple is very, very important. And also allowing yourself that scheduled binging. So for fat loss, this is the most effective approach I've found. Now, could you find something that's 10% more effective? Yes, but 90% of the people are going to quit it. So it's finding, again, that balance of the most effective that is still going to have the highest rate of compliance. And that's where it starts. But I think absolutely, like you said, most people are going to focus on the fat loss because the fat loss is where the most insecurity lies. It's where people have experienced the most failure already.
Right.
So most people haven't tried to run an do an Ironman or swim 2 miles
or even have the desire to.
Yeah, or never had the desire to, which is fine.
Yeah.
And one point you brought up, which is very important, is in the beginning of the book, in the how to use this book section, I make it very clear that most people are going to focus on 100 to 200 pages of the book. And so the goals that you read are the most common objectives. And I say, if this is your goal, read these following 4 chapters. If this is your goal, read these following 4 chapters. Right. And it's kind of like a joy of cooking, but also a diary of a madman. So you dip in and out to focus on the things that you like. And
that's good. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. The joy of cooking meets Diary of a Madman.
Yeah. Right.
With a little drug dealing thrown in.
A little bit.
Look, somebody else might have decided to write 10 books. Each one focusing on these different areas.
Right.
But now, I'm going to share something with you that I've never actually shared publicly, because it's never really been relevant to my work or any interview or discussion I've ever had. But I've always had trouble with overeating my whole life. And now when I was a kid, I just thought, well, I come from one of those Eastern European Jewish families.
Right.
This is the way it is. You're taught to eat. My father always, overate and then got skinny, and then overate, that got skinny, and then overate, that got skinny. There's this pattern. And one of the ways that I compensated throughout my life was being an extreme athlete. When I was younger, it was football, and then when I got older, it was bike racing, and then into martial arts. And, that's sort of how I managed, in a sense, compensated. And when I was an actor, it was no problem, because I always had to have my shirt off. So if I didn't have abs, I wasn't going to get cast.
Right.
Okay. But then I became a writer. It wasn't as important to have abs. I needed to look good, but I wasn't getting judged on that anymore. Right. And I found it harder to manage that process of constricting what I ate. Okay?
Right.
All right. So this past summer, I dropped almost 40 pounds in 50 days.
Wow, congratulations.
Well, it was great, but then I put it back on.
Oh, yes, that happens. With interest, maybe.
Yeah, because the thing is, not with interest, fortunately,
okay,
but people said to me I looked too skinny. I was down to 160 pounds. And at my size, that's pretty thin. That's like, if I was fighting at that weight, then normally my walking weight would be 180, and but I had got down to like a really low weight, and I thought I looked great. And, everyone around me was like, "You look like a freak." But it was so exciting to be that thin. Then I put it back on. Now, the reason I mention it is because when I start to eat something that is very, very high fat, high sugar, I don't want to stop eating it.
Right.
Okay. So when you talked about this section on binging, the word binge is a very loaded word.
Sure.
And I found it interesting that you chose that word. And then you mentioned very offhandedly in the book, when I was in high school, I was prone to overeat.
Yep.
So I had to figure out how to, cut weight dramatically as a wrestler. Okay.
Right.
So I was wondering if that influenced your decision to create this eating plan where you have these quote-unquote binges once a week, and then constrict the rest of the week. Because a normal eater, regular type eater, would never need to binge or constrict.
Right.
They're just very regular in the way they eat. They don't overeat, and that's, or they don't even remember to eat.
Right.
So I put that to you. And one last thing I'll say is because I got the book last Saturday. Sunday morning I started with the slow carb. And by Saturday morning, I had already dropped 7 pounds. Okay. So then the binge comes on Saturday, and I'm like, I don't want to do the binge because if I start the binge, I won't be able to stop the binge.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I forced myself to do it, but then I found going back Sunday morning, I didn't go back to the original plan. I think a more regular person could. I had trouble going back, and now I have to work my way back into it. So I wanted you to address these issues, because this is what I think a lot of people deal with this stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So there are a few things. I think the first is that people do have a normal way of eating, but normal is usually going to be, I don't have a weight problem and I take care of myself all the time, so I don't need to have a binge day. Or normal is going to be habitual overeating. Or normal is going to be, I watch my weight, then I binge, then I eat poorly for a month, gain it back, and then try to lose weight again.
Yeah, that's usually what I would do.
Right, which is, I think, what a lot of people do, at least the people who sort of continually have that 10 to 20 pounds that they'd like to lose. And what I realized for myself, I like to eat. I really like to eat. I mean,
do you call yourself Orca?
Orca, right.
The way you eat so fast?
That's what a friend of mine nicknamed me because of the size. I would eat pieces of fish the size of my fist. And I love to eat. So I found that I'm going to binge or overeat. Let's say overeat just because it's less loaded. I'm going to overeat one way or another, so I might as well schedule it so I can limit the damage. And it's a process of trial and error. In most cases, people will have the greatest success with one day of planned overeating. In some cases, when you get into the fine-tuning chapter related to the slow carb, you'll find that my general approach is I will have a healthy breakfast, high-protein breakfast, then I will have 1 or 2 cheat meals that I really enjoy, like chocolate croissants and all the good stuff. And I'll also add exercise to that day, and it doesn't have to be long, but a few tweaks, supplements, things like that to minimize fat gain. For most people, that is going to be the most effective. But there are outliers, okay? So there are people who will benefit from, males in particular. Women have a harder time doing this, but males, in some cases, will benefit from either the first 2 to 4 weeks, no binge days. Okay. And I think in your case, that might be true. And then having a cheat meal as opposed to a cheat day. But having some element of cheating and having a time constraint is very helpful. So in some cases, for me, as one example, if I really want to get lean, when I overeat, I will be overeating, including good foods. So it might be with quinoa. I might add in, and again, this is a very controversial subject, but I'll add in more good carbs for more of a carbohydrate loading period. And that's another approach. But the baseline to start with, and this is why the goal is to create good self-experimenters, because it's very this is going to work. If it doesn't work, then here's how you can tweak it in one direction or the other. And I'm hoping that is what people will do with all these different protocols. And that I really hope I have to revise this book in 6 months with even better stuff.
Yeah. But I think that's a really important point to highlight, that you are really encouraging us to learn how to experiment and to track what we're doing so that we actually have a real understanding of what effects we're creating based on our actions. And I think that's hard for a lot of folks. It's not something that we grow up doing. And so you're a geek in the best sense of the word, and are obsessed with numbers. Yeah.
No, it's true. If I could just jump in for 1 second. So the challenge for me and the payoff for me has been trying to figure out a way to give people 1 or 2 numbers that they can track, or to just give them something to record. So for me, I'm happy to record everything. I'm happy to do blood tests every 2 weeks because I'm loony. But for many people, let's say this one woman, a good friend of mine, she's British, loves bread and cheese, and all I had her do, she just tracked her performance. She didn't even focus on appearance, even though that was her goal. And we changed her breakfast. That's all we changed. All we changed was her breakfast, and within 4 to 5 weeks, she'd lost 3% body fat.
Wow.
Because she was tracking her kettlebell swings. Specifically, she was tracking kettlebell swings. Now, for someone else, another friend, this is a real example, and this is based on the research, all I had him do was take his iPhone out of his pocket before he was thinking of eating anything or before he ate his meals, and he would take a photograph of everything he was going to eat. And this, just taking that break to be conscious about the decision you're making, changed his behavior. I didn't give him any prescription. I didn't say do A, B, and C. I said all you need to do is take a photograph of your food before you eat it. And he lost 30 plus pounds just by doing that.
Now, I want to just, I'm going to stop the recording for a minute and then restart it so we have 2 parts, just so it's not a massive file. And then I have a question about that specifically. So hold on one sec.